Who cares about interest rates? Who cares about tariffs? Who cares about politics? Who cares about credit? You only care about that because you don't know about creative financing. You can use creative financing today to buy a house without worrying about any of that other stuff. When you buy a home with creative financing, they're not going to check your credit, they're not going to check your bank statements, and that loan isn't even going to be in your name. My name is Chris A. Williams, real estate owner, investor, and entrepreneur. When I invest in real estate, I love to invest in creative financing. Creative financing is the way I was able to scale my portfolio and buy more homes for less money out of pocket. In this video, I'm going to tell you the real truth about creative financing and how you can do it today. This is many investors right now, or even home buyers, because they're so concerned about the interest rates. They're so concerned about what's going on in the environment. You see this? Not only do they have a frown, they have the evil scowl because they think they can't get into real estate because everything that's going on. Versus this other guy right here, this person, they bought their home with creative financing. So not only do they have a smile on their face, they got a big cheesy grin now. They're super happy because they bought their home with creative financing. With creative financing, they don't have to worry about none of that. None of the interest rates, who cares? If you want a detailed breakdown on exactly what creative financing is and strategies on how you can do it literally right now, watch the video with the link in the description. Click that and you'll learn everything. But this video, we're going to get into the real truth and everything behind creative financing. So I've had many appointments and talk with sellers about creative financing. And when I first started, they kept on saying creative financing was this one particular word. They thought it was illegal. And they thought it was illegal because they had never heard of it before. So they said, hey, if I've never heard of it before and it's not a traditional bank loan, then it must be illegal. But that's not the truth. Creative financing is real, is legal, and it's legit. Many investors have been doing it for years and years and years. Some of my mentors have been doing it since the 1980s. It's very reputable, and it is a way in which you can invest in real estate, and not only just invest in real estate, you can buy your personal home creative financing. It's going to save you a lot of money out of pocket. Now remember, if you want to know some of the more details, watch that previous video, talk more about it. So let's talk about the pros and cons of creative financing. Voila. So some of the pros of purchasing a home with creative financing is low, even no money down, meaning you don't have to bring anything out of pocket. And sometimes if you do, it's a very low amount versus if you purchase a home traditionally, especially if we're talking about an investment home, you got to bring 20%. If we're talking, a $300,000 price point, 20% of that is, I don't know the math, but it's a lot of money. We'll put that on the screen, what that amount is. So another pro of it is no credit check. As I said at the start of the video, they're not going to check your credit because the loan is still saying in the seller's name, and the seller, they got their credit check when they first bought the home. Another pro, flexible terms. I love creative financing because you can make the terms literally whatever you want them to be under owner financing. Under subject to, though, you do have to assume the seller's terms of their mortgage. And another pro is fast closing. So this one's for my wholesalers and cash offer people out here. A lot of times you guys may run across houses that they do need a fast closing. They're in a distressed situation, but they want too much for the property. Well, cool. All right, this is where creative financing can come in to be able to service them. Even though you may not be able to meet their price under a cash offer, meet their price with the creative financing offer, because you can meet their price, just set their terms. I like to describe it as a seesaw, right? So for a seesaw, to get on a seesaw, it needs to be even. It can't be up, it can't be down. So I call one side of the seesaw, let's call this the price, and the other side is the terms. I need those to work, right? So if the seller is here, they're up here on the price, to balance it out, what do I have to do? I need more favorable terms, and that's why we can balance it out. Now, if I have certain terms that I want and the seller wants a certain price that they want, all right, let's balance it out. Let's figure it out so we can all win at the end of the day. And that's why I love creative financing, because it's basically like play, make a deal. So I told you all about the pros, the positives, and why I love creative financing, but we're being real in this video. We're going to tell the truths about creative financing. So to tell the truth, I got to get into the negatives. I got to get into the cons of creative financing. First con is that it can be complex. I would not recommend, if this is your first real estate deal, you've never done a real estate before, I would not recommend creative financing unless you're partnering with somebody who has done it before, because one of the biggest things in creative financing is you need good paperwork. This is not a short-term relationship like a cash offer is, where 30 days you don't ever speak to the seller again. This is a long-standing relationship. So if you have owner finance, that can be however long. It can be 100 years, it can be a year, it could be 6 months, whatever it is. So you have a long-standing relationship with the seller. And then if you're purchasing it via subject to, you're taking whatever the mortgage length that they have left on that. So they can have 20, 30 years left on their mortgage. So You got to make sure all parties are protected. We don't do one-sided contracts over here. We're not going to do contracts that only benefit you as an investor and they mess up the seller. So you got to have good paperwork. And if you don't have good paperwork, reach out to somebody in your marketplace who is doing these deals and they'll be able to provide you with that. Another con is that deals can be risky, especially if you don't structure them right. This is why I say it can be complex, because we're talking about moving numbers, we're talking about long terms, moving interest rates, you know, all of these things. So it can be risky if you don't know exactly what you're doing. So that's why it's important that we're going to skip this one right here to go to this one, which is you need to work with pros. And when I say pros, you want to work with reputable attorneys, reputable title company, because they can give you advice or guidance on, okay, this is a risky deal. Maybe you should change some terms, or some of these terms don't make sense. Some of these terms aren't in your favor. Some of these terms aren't in the seller's favor. Some of these terms aren't in anybody's favor. So that's why it's important to work with pros to overlook this process. Now, let's get into this con, which I don't really think it's a con, to be honest with you, but for some people it can be a con, which is you need to have great trust with the seller. So I can see how this could be a con if you've never talked to the seller before, you're more so in it for a quick buck, you don't feel like building a relationship with the seller, then yeah, for sure it's a con. But in all my deals, regardless if I found them myself, regardless if it's somebody I know, regardless if it's somebody brought me the deal, I always make sure to have a great trust, great relationship with the seller, because with creative financing, the mortgage is still in their name. The rest of the house isn't in their name anymore. Like, they don't have any liability for the house, but the mortgage is still in their name. So you got to make sure that you're treating them right. You got to make sure that everything is good, everything's on the up and up. Remember, when you're explaining it to the seller and why it benefits them, and I gave this tip in the video where I detailed creative financing, is that with this structure, especially subject to, the mortgage is going to stay in their name, which is going to boost their credit. So guess what happens? Every single first or every single start of the month, they're going to get an email saying, hey, your credit has risen, your credit keeps on going up, even though they're not doing anything at all, because you are the one that's paying the mortgage on their behalf. So a lot of people think that creative financing deals are just so hard to find. Like, you got to search this mystical portal to be able to find these deals. And I'm here to tell you the truth. And the truth is, that's not true. That's not accurate. You can find a creative financing deal today, because guess what? They're sitting on your local MLS. Now, the thing is, they don't know their creative financing deals yet. So I'm going to tell you how you can find these creative financing deals. All you have to do, go to your local MLS. If you don't have MLS access, partner with the agent who does. Go to the MLS, search the homes that have been listed the longest on the market, or look for motivated sellers. Look for these ones. VA loans work usually very well when it comes to creative financing, especially subject to offers. Search those and then just start making offers. A lot of times, I'll be honest with you guys, if they're listed, the agent probably isn't going to know what creative financing is. So what you can do is you can send them my video on creative financing where it's breaking down creative financing so they'll be able to understand it. And you don't got to waste your time explaining it to them. But also, that's what these videos are for too. So you can have these conversations to be able to explain pertinent details, because it's going to change based on the certain property and based on the situation. So that's a tip right there. Valuable tip. Look at your local MLS for creative financing deals. Another one is if you just go direct to seller. To be honest with you, just like when you're presenting a cash offer, you're going direct to seller, you're presenting a cash offer. Have this in your bag too as you're presenting to them. What I like to tell my agents is we like to have a conveyor tool belt of multiple tools to which we could present a seller that best helps them in their situation. So a cash offer may not work for a seller, but creative finance, ding, 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 that may work. And for my agents, I say, hey, that doesn't work, listing may work. So I want to talk to you all about what you can do with a property once you've acquired it via creative financing. The world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want with a property once you have it. So some of the common strategies are, one, people will just keep it and just live in it. They'll use it as a personal house. Okay, cool. That's a common one. Another one is, let's get into real estate investing. If you're flipping, my first flip that I did, I purchased it via creative financing, and my entry fee was less than $10,000 because I purchased it via creative financing, versus if I would have purchased it traditionally with hard money financing, I would have been out of pocket almost $80,000. So we're talking I saved 10 times what I would have saved by purchasing creative financing. So there's your flip option right there. And then of course, when you sell your flip, then you exit out the deal, the creative financing deal with the seller, and they're paid off. Another strategy is if you keep it as a long-term rental. Let's talk about long-term rental options there. So you can keep it as a rental, you get your cash flow, all things like that. We're talking about a traditional rental. You have to remember when you're factoring in your cash flow, you want to factor in property management fees, and you also want to factor maintenance, repairs, expense fees too. So factor that into your cash flow. Now, another option when it comes to long-term investment properties, and this is my preferred method right here, is what's called a wrap. And a wrap is you purchase the property via creative financing, but you quote unquote sell it under seller financing to an end buyer or to a tenant. Let's call it a tenant, because I call them a tenant because they're still paying you monthly and they give you a down payment. So how I do mine is like an agreement for deed situation. So I have the property under whatever terms that I have it, and then with my agreement for deed, I quote unquote sell it under terms in which we select. So give an example, I've got the property and I'll sell it under agreement for deed under a 30-year term, such and such interest rate, such and such down payment, such and such monthly, you know, and that's just depending on the situation, depending on the comparables, depending on the market. And I love this method because it maximizes my cash on cash return. Pretty much any of the money that I had to spend to get the deal, I get at least half of that back, because creative financing, the entry fee isn't that much. And they usually give me a significant down payment. We're talking 12K, 15K, sometimes upwards of 20K plus, just so they can get in the deal. Not only did you get your down payment, but every single month you are getting that check or that money from the tenant, and you don't have to worry about any repairs. You don't have to worry about any maintenance. You don't have to worry about any property management fee, because remember, it's an agreement for deed, and that tenant, in a sense, they're working to own the home. That's why they keep on paying the rent, is for ownership of the home. And I love this strategy because let's say, you know, God forbid, they mess up the home and they stop paying the rent or whatever. Guess what? You get to repeat the same exact strategy with another end buyer. And at that point, your home has risen in appreciation and you don't have to do anything to the home. My first one that I did this way, it basically needed a whole remodel. And I ended up doing this wrap situation because I didn't want to put the money in for the rehab. So what I did was this situation, even though it needed like, let's say 50 to 60K worth of rehab, that tenant, they came in, did all the repairs themselves, and it didn't cost me any money, but the deed is still in my name. So remember, if they decide they stop paying rent, anything like that, I get to take that house back and all the work that they've done into it. Now, guess what? I get to sell the house again for an even higher price. So remember, that's a wrap. That's one of my favorite exit strategies. There's multiple exit strategies that people can also get into when it comes to creative financing. If you have a different one I haven't listed, let me know below in the comments, and I would love to talk more about that and get your insights on that. So in my other videos, I've given you different real estate tactics, more details on it and such, explaining how you can do it. This video, I want to give you the real truth about creative financing and pretty much all the stuff that you need to know. So you can take the information from this video and the other videos and get your first real estate investment deal today. And if you feel that this video is helpful for somebody else, another real estate investor just like yourself, somebody who's looking to get in real estate, or somebody who's even in real estate already, make sure you send them this also too.